right. Up next, we have a session titled The Playbook for Selling MDM to Leadership, where we have a panel of experts who are going to talk about best practices and real-world experiences in tackling, debatably, arguably, the most difficult aspect of launching an MDM program, and that is effective communication and securing leadership buy-in. So grab a pen, grab a notebook, and get ready to take some really great notes and write down some great takeaways. Please help me welcome David Neal, Chief Data Officer of Cetera Financial Group, Lawrence Young, Value Consultant at Prophecy, Malcolm Hawker, Head of Data Strategy at Prophecy, and Len Finkel, Chief Executive Officer of Prophecy. Having said that, take it away, guys.
Thank you very much. Welcome to everyone, and thank you for joining us. My name is Len Finkel. I'm the Chief Executive Officer here at Prophecy, based in Alpharetta. I really appreciate everyone joining. I am accompanied by three esteemed colleagues. I'm going to ask each of them to introduce themselves. Let's start with you, David.
Thanks, Len. David Neal. I'm the Chief Data Officer at Cetera Financial Group. I've been an MDM practitioner for over 20 years. It's hard to believe that I have been in the data space that long. Mainly financial services. I've implemented MDM at probably 10 to 12 different companies, including a short stint in consulting. But really am passionate about data and what people can do with data and how they can sell that to help their organizations grow.
Fantastic. Thank you, David, and thank you for joining us. Lawrence.
Thanks, Len. Hi, my name is Lawrence Young. I'm Prophecy's Value Consultant. My role in the organization is to help our customers understand and connect the dots between improving their data and making value out of that data. So both organizational as well as financial value and how it makes things better.
Fantastic. Thank you very much for joining us, Lawrence. Malcolm.
Good morning, evening, or afternoon, everybody. I'm Malcolm Hawker. I'm the head of data strategy for Prophecy Software. I've been in this role with Prophecy for about a year. Previous to that, I was an analyst with Gartner covering MDM and data governance. During that time with Gartner, I was given the honor of speaking with no fewer than 1,500 senior data leaders, CDOs, and others who were wrestling with how to extract value from MDM. As Lawrence said, how to connect those dots between better data and business outcomes. Excited to talk about that topic today.
Excellent. We're excited to hear everything. And to the audience, one of the things that we see here at Prophecy is working with so many companies out in the industry is that many of MDM is interesting because it can be viewed as very technical, but clearly it has a lot of business value and it's critical to have the business involved. So connecting the two is a little bit different than some of the other software products that are out on the market that are either focused on just technical people or just business people. MDM really brings them all together. And that can add a challenge to helping the business understand and executives on why you should invest in MDM. So as it was introduced, this conversation is around a playbook for selling MDM to leadership. So we have 5 areas that we have identified in over our time working in this field, and this is all we do is MDM. So we see this all the time, and we're going to delve into each of these 5 areas individually. So let me start off by sharing what those 5 areas are. First is it's important to explain what problem you're solving with master data management. Number 2 is aligning that problem to an existing priority that already sits in the business. 3 is making a quantifiable connection between better data and business results that you get from that better data. 4th, it's around identifying the risks involved with implementing a project. And by the way, that's true of any investment that you make in software or anything else. Executives always want to understand the risks involved, both in doing it and not doing it. And last and finally is how do you put it all together into a cohesive business case that really shows the business outcomes and impact that it can produce to the business. So those are the 5 areas that our esteemed panel all agreed would be areas that we should delve into in this short time together. So the first question that we're going to tackle is what problems are we trying to solve? And I'm going to start with David Neal, who, as you heard, is on the customer side, has been there for years and gone through MDM implementations and evaluations many times over the years. So David, can you share with the audience how you go about identifying which of the many problems that you have that are most pertinent to master data management, and saying that master data management is the right solution to solve that problem?
Yeah, Len, and I think it's very important to understand that, regardless of what we think as data practitioners, MDM is not the right solution for every problem that presents itself. So you do have to be very diligent in picking out the right problem that you're looking for to solve. And the way you do that is twofold to me. Is one, it has to do around how you want to define your organization. And so that's the first and most easy way to look for a problem that you can apply MDM to. And once you've decided, okay, this could be a conversation point, this could be a way that we describe or we want to talk about our organization, the second way to pick a good MDM problem to go solve is choose one that has everybody involved from the business side. It's not a technical solution, as you said earlier. This is something you want your business excited about. This is something you want your business to really partner and help you find the right solution to drive that initial value. So the two things that I really look for when we start looking for areas in which we might apply MDM is one, is it truly a solution MDM can solve? Does it talk about describing the org or different pieces of the organization? It's not about a new measure or a new KPI that we want to roll out. And then secondly, get something that you can have the business excited about and moving behind you and help drive that conversation. Because as they get on board and as they bring people or they bring their excitement to the table, you're really going to find these projects move a lot quicker.
Now that makes a lot of sense, David, and I love that, because you're right. And let's face it, after it's selected, if indeed the organization determines they're going to do it, the business has to be involved in using it every day. So for them to be excited is a great point. There's so many variables. Malcolm, you talk a lot about being highly agile in your approach to MDM. Can you briefly explain what you mean by that and how that can influence the types of problems that you really feel MDM should be attached to?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Len. And just kind of following on to some of David's comments as well. When we talk about agility, we're really talking about implementation and finding the right problems that align to those MDM use cases that we're talking about. From a high level, we should be talking about problems that the business really cares about. So that's a function of your overall business strategy. What is your CEO, your CFO, your CIO? What are they talking about in company all hands? What's appearing on all of your quarterly or annual PowerPoints or company meetings? What are those 3 or 4 top business priorities that are critical to the business? And you go one level down from that at more of a data strategy level. How do you see your data strategy aligning to those problems? Most of the companies that I've talked to over the years, there's no shortage of problems here. Now, the agility aspect comes in from the implementation side and from the scope side and from the priority side, where you say, okay, we've got a lot of different problems here. We've identified business priorities that align to supplier onboarding or supply chain optimization or maybe digital experience, whatever those things are. Can you find stakeholders within the organizations that have very, very acute problems that are related to master data? Things like customer, supplier, location, asset, employee. And then how do you find a way to be very specific on the problems you're trying to solve? And the way to do that, the way to be agile in the MDM space, is to really drill down on a handful of KPIs that the business uses to measure the severity of the problem, or on the flip side of that, the opportunity that the problem would solve, the opportunity that would be delivered if the problem is solved. So agility really comes in from more of an implementation side, but you can overlay it when you're talking about that strategic cascade all the way from the top all the way to the bottom.
Excellent. And that does tie very much when you talked about getting down to the department level, finding the individuals that are excited, like David talked about. That's really important too. And I like what you said about, no shortage of problems. Earlier in my career, I got some great advice from a CEO about speaking to leaders in general. And one of the things he told me was, Len, you don't have to go in, and you shouldn't try to be identifying these new problems, because these executives, they know the problems they've got. If they don't know, if you know their problems better than they do, then they probably have bigger problems. So executives aren't looking for a new problem. They're looking for solutions to solve problems they're already aware of, which ties right into the strategic priorities that you just talked about, right? They've got tons of priorities. Which are the most strategic, and how do you tie your issue to the problems that are most important to them, the challenges that they want to solve? And I love what you two are just talking about, is not just focusing on the outcome being, or the KPI being data quality, but it's what's the outcome of that, which kind of brings us into our next point. And that was around making quantifiable connections between better data and better results, right? Really, what's the business impact to that higher data quality? So Malcolm, we have found that a key step in successfully selling MDM to leadership is being able to express the outcomes. Can you give the audience a little bit of your take after speaking to so many customers? How do you speak their language? What are some things that you can do to help with that?
You need to speak the language of business. The best way to do that is to speak through the lens of metrics that are being used to manage the performance of your business partners. So you asked the question of making that connection between better data and better business. This is the chasm that needs to be bridged by data and analytics leaders. This is the hardest part. This is the one question that I was asked the most when I was a Gartner analyst, of how to do this. Really looking forward to getting Lawrence's input here, because I know this is something that he deals with day in and day out. But when I was talking to CDOs about this very thing, what I said was, it's interesting, David, you mentioned a little art, or more art than science, when it comes to actually building these connections between better data. For example, reducing our duplicate rate and business outcomes, like maybe a cross-sell or an upsell. There is a modeling exercise there. And ultimately what we're talking about is building a model, right? Building a model between better data and a model between business outcomes. I love using sales-centric metrics, because chances are your organization already has models in place that says, if I get one more qualified lead, right? Or if I move this deal a little bit farther down the pipeline, how many dollars is that going to equal for me? So if you can model the impacts of better data, higher quality data, more consistent, more trustworthy sales data, and this is just one example. It could be supply chain data, it could be employee data, it doesn't matter. But often with a lot of companies, these metrics already exist. So if you can model that, and it is inherently a modeling exercise, then you've solved for how to connect these things together. At the beginning, it'll be an estimate, but as you move forward in your MDM journey, that number will get better and better and better, and you need to be refining it as you go.
Excellent. So what I'm hearing you say, Malcolm, is whenever possible, use existing metrics,
exactly,
and existing models that they've already bought into and are excited about and understand, and fitting it into almost like adaptive MDM. But that's another section. This is adaptive business language, right? Let's fit with what they already understand. I love that. So you mentioned Lawrence. Let's hop over to you, Lawrence. If you were to sit down and try to outline a simple framework, because we know it's really not simple, but that's the art, is how do you take something complex and make it more simple, to make that quantifiable connection between better data and better results, what might that simple framework look like?
So I think first, what you need to do is work with the business leaders to truly understand what those business objectives are, and whatever those KPIs might be. Once you're at that point, you need to figure out where the associated data lives that matches those objectives. If that data is in multiple CRMs, or it's in spreadsheets, or it's tribal knowledge, you need to know that, because that's kind of step one into understanding how you're going to integrate that data together, but then also what that means in terms of revenue growth or cost savings. After we know kind of where that data is, what we need to do next is understand how people access that data and use it. That's also going to be important to understand the amount of effort that the business is going through to get the insights that they need, or to do the things that they are doing with their data. Then you need to speak with those parties that are up close and personal with that data, so you understand things like, okay, what are the work streams that you're going through right now to do what you need to do? Where do you see improvements? Where can we improve things? How much do you think we can improve? And that's where we start to get to the point where we have metrics or calculations that we can make to then decide, well, hey, if we're focused on this business objective based on the subject matter experts that we spoke with, we can improve whatever this thing is by 5%, 10%, or some kind of magnitude that matches the business objective that has been defined by the organization. So that's really the general framework, though, is really making sure you understand those business objectives, making sure that you know where that data is that's associated with those business objectives, make sure you know how people are using it, and then finally making sure you understand not only how people are using it, but where they see improvement that can happen based on improving that data.
Excellent. No, I think that's pretty straightforward, which is excellent. That's right. Not easy, but straightforward. And I love that, getting the business to buy into, hey, if we did this, would this help you improve a percentage? If so, what percentage? And really getting them involved in the conversation. That's fantastic. David, you've been in the trenches on the other side with the customer going through this. As a customer, is there any advice you might give to make this process that we just described, as simple as possible for someone to do?
Yeah, and it's really funny. I mean, I heard Malcolm and Lawrence talking, and I was thinking about specific examples over my career of how we've had to align and try to do this. And one of the simplest things is, before you go down this road, make sure that the business buys in that there is a data problem and they do need better data. Because oftentimes I've been burned and said, oh, if we do this, it's going to help improve things. And they're like, but we really don't see that we've got a data problem here. So the first thing is, you've got to get a business unit that really wants to champion the fact that, hey, we don't have enough data to make the right decisions with. So that's one of the biggest things. But secondly, the thing that I really focus on when it comes to aligning business results with data is not just look at it from a financial perspective. A lot of times people go into this and say, what is the financial outcome of making this? A lot of times the MDM solutions that we found have had secondary financial results, but really it's, how can we use this to make better business decisions? And then tying those business decisions, as you said, with that model into the long-term financial results. The easiest way to do that is to understand the interrelationships that those business decisions bring to the table, and then aligning the financial results to it that way. So don't automatically just go look for, this is directly correlated to one measure. Sometimes those financial results, for us in my last organization, we looked at a lot of next best product things. It's hard to determine a straight line revenue gain from that next best product unless you're able to identify what those products are. So that's making it simple, is not always jumping to this better data gives you this financial result. It's this better data gives you this ability in the business that then turns into a financial result. So that's how we made it a little easier to pitch. What was the better data going to help solve as the business equation?
Gotcha. Malcolm, I see your mind going, and speaking to so many customers as an analyst, anything that you want to add or comment into what David just explained?
No, I mean, there's a few common threads here. One is, data needs to be viewed as part of the problem, right? And I would often say things to my clients at Gartner and my clients today at Prophecy. I would use the phrase, go where you're wanted. Right, this gets back to the idea of, there's generally no shortage of business problems. There's lots of business problems and lots of problems tied to data. I've never experienced a CDO that doesn't have a laundry list of things this long related to data challenges. But one of the themes that you are hearing here is, there needs to be identified data problems. You need to have a motivated customer. You need to have a motivated stakeholder. You need to go where you're wanted, right? And trying to sell, and this is really a sales exercise here. This broader session, what we're talking about here is selling MDM internally. That's really what it is. And trying to sell it to somebody who doesn't necessarily want to buy it or doesn't necessarily see the value will be infinitely harder than it would be to somebody who sees it and to somebody who knows, hey, we got a real problem here with data, and my bonus is tied to fixing that problem. That's the kind of stakeholder you need to try to find. Lastly, I would mention, and Lawrence kind of hinted at this in some of his comments, and you mentioned this as well, Lynn, is that you need to sit down with the business stakeholders. And typically, within any leadership function, there were 2 or 3 or 4 people, depending on the company size, who are heavily involved with a data leader, a business leader, whether that is a chief procurement officer or a chief investment officer, on and on. There are a handful of people. Often they're in a financial planning and analysis role, FP&A. Often they may be in more of a PMO type role. Maybe they report directly to those business leaders, but they're almost always ones that are doing the planning, the budgeting, the forecasting, doing the financial analysis for those business leaders. It's those people that you want to find and sit down and have the conversation that Lawrence mentioned about, do you think changing this would result in this outcome? What do you think would happen if we made your lead data better in the case of talking with somebody in a CRO organization? So a lot of practical things that you can apply here, going where you're wanted, finding the right people, going to a motivated customer, all these things can help move the needle.
When you find a motivated customer that has a problem that you know is caused by bad data, but circling back then to the beginning of the conversation about getting agreement that it's a data problem, any suggestions for when you know there's a data problem, but let's say the business in this case doesn't realize it, any thoughts for how to help them realize or agree that there is a data problem?
Yeah, absolutely. The best way to do that is again, to sit down with them and have a conversation about the state of the nation when it comes to their data. The second best way to do that is to really find a way to show the art of, I call it the art of the possible, right? Sometimes that will require maybe even a short-term POC or some sort of small test. Pluck out 15 or 20, maybe in this case it's customer data. I'm spitballing here. Just find 15 or 20 customer records that are really, really egregious. There's some real big problems there. And maybe find 1 or 2 or 3 of those customers where you know your CEO is going to be having a meeting with their peer in that customer or a high value customer, right? That's another kind of trick here you can use, is that there will be everybody has high value customers. So if you can find some very kind of egregious use cases, right, for a high value customer where you are able to say, hey, we've got 4 different versions of one of our best customers across in our CRM system, and how in the world are we effectively able to manage this relationship? Sometimes that's enough of a POC to bring the business to a state of awareness that, oh man, yeah, we really do have a problem here.
That's a great point, Malcolm. And actually, it's funny that just triggered in my mind. One of the demonstrations I've seen here actually came out of an actual customer POC where they looked at their list of highest value customers by spend. And when they actually created golden records or connected their customers that were listed as different customers, even though they were the same, but under different names, maybe in different regions. And when this customer saw the list where the master data wasn't cleansed and deduplicated and matched, their actual top customer list changed drastically. Half of the customers changed simply by connecting those. So I think that's a great point. Actually showing them their own data and giving them an example and making it concrete really goes a long way. All right. So there's so many exciting things we could talk about on that topic, but I will move on to the 4th topic around a risk. Because when you go and, to use your term, Malcolm, internally, not us, but internally, a customer goes to sell their executives. Most executives, as they should, they want to see the opportunity, but they also want to understand the risks involved in doing any project, whether it's software or not. David, Malcolm just mentioned, business buy-in. Can you talk a little bit about that and managing that risk of making sure the business users are bought in as you go through the start and middle and end and journey of the project?
Yeah, and it's funny. I don't think I've ever left an organization and been at the end of my MDM journey. So the biggest risk that I manage at the beginning of selling the process is saying, this is not a software implementation. This is not a short-term fix to something that's going to be going on. This is a long-term lifestyle change for us as an organization. That's the biggest risk is for people to look at this as another software provider coming in, providing a solution that has got a definitive path and a definitive end date in mind. Now, each of the milestones along the way do, but you're never done with your MDM journey because your organization never stops moving. So the biggest risk that I manage and the biggest risk that I present in every business case that we look at is, hey, listen, we're going to have a year-over-year spend associated with our MDM platform, no matter what we do. It's not the cost of running the platform for what we do. It's the cost of constant maintenance. Because if you tell me a business user isn't going to think of the next best idea that they want to include in their MDM model, then you're crazy, because that is the biggest risk that I see. The second risk is more of a legal and kind of operational risk. I sit in financial services, so I deal with PII all day long, and I deal with different regulations around different states that we operate in. At one of my companies, it was different countries that we operated in, around the need to secure and protect that information. So one of the risks that I try to get ahead of whenever we're doing the business case is anytime you're working with PII, you are now creating a central point that, depending on the way you structure your MDM implementation, people are going to have a lot of concern around. So you have to be upfront in saying, if we aren't careful, if we don't address these risks, if we don't address the right type of security to protect this information, we do put ourselves at having some operational risk in the MDM model. So those are the two risks I really focus on when selling the business case, because I don't want anybody to think that we're just being flippant, because as a data officer, our primary job is to make sure that we've got good governance. MDM provides the platform to have that governance. It provides the platform to secure it, but to go in it blindly without calling out that risk is doing a disservice to the people you're selling it to.
Great point, David. Listen, it is called data management for a reason. It's ongoing. It's not data cleansing, right? It's, you got to get it clean, but keep it clean, keep it in sync, right? Keep it operational, keep everything updated, and it is ongoing. And I think those are great points. So, we talked about scope creep as being one of the risks that are out there. And by the way, I've seen that. So I didn't go through my bio, but I've been in the software business for over 30 years. Started in ERP, CRM, and then data management for over the last dozen years. But in all of those areas, that is always something that can cause problems. Is things that can scope that continues to expand. No one is interested until now you've bought the product and you start the project, and suddenly your phone's ringing off the hook because everyone's calling you. Oh, I understand, we got this. Well, I want to tell you about a problem I have. So you're trying to keep it contained. So Lawrence, there's a lot of different things we can talk about here, and maybe we'll even come back to scope creep as part of the whole business case, because I think the business case can play a big role in that. And why don't we start there? Because the fifth and final topic is around the business case and presenting it. But how do you see the business case? I'm skipping ahead a little bit. Being one of the vehicles or tools that you could have to control that scope creep. And then we'll talk about some of the other things about a business case. But let's touch on that for a minute, since it weaves into the last topic.
So when you think about the business case, a big or core part of the business case is aligning all parties on what's important and what's next. So when we talk about the risk that's associated with doing projects like this, the whole reason why we have this technical business partnership is to gain that alignment so we can put together a story, which I think is the most important part of the business case, a compelling story about why it's important for us to improve the quality and accessibility of our data. So that's really part one. Part two, of course, is we have to realize that these projects that we do, they're not really done in a vacuum. They usually take considerable amount of time and effort from people, as well as expenditure. So we need to make sure we put together a financial accounting of why this is important as well. So in that second part, then we need to put together a report that gives folks who are going to be in charge of spending money on our project the confidence that the money that they're putting forth on the project is going to be well used and is going to net a return for that project. And so these are kind of the two main parts of that business case that kind of gets us to the point of being very confident as a holistic group that this project is the right thing to do.
I love that, because you mentioned two things there, the return on investment, but also the alignment, right? And we're going to talk about return on investment in just a second, because that's the first thing people think about when they talk about a business case. We'll hit it second instead of first. That's the first thing people think, how do I justify the purchase? And it is critical. But I love what you said about getting alignment with the organization, because that is a key to the projects being successful. Hey, we're all aligned. Here are the three things we said we have to get done. And you can use that tool in governance committees that are governing projects, where what I've seen successful companies do in the past is when people start ringing their phone, the project manager that just bought and invested in MDM and say, oh, we want to do this, we want to do this, they can point back to the business case and say, hey, listen, here are the three things we already identified. We'd love to address that also. But it keeps everyone focused on, hey, here's the pot in the initial end of the initial rainbow, or the first segment. Let's stay on that. If it's not in this business case, then we shouldn't focus on it. And it is a great tool to help with that avoiding of scope creep and keeping everyone focused. And also, by the way, keeping them excited, which brings us to the second part about the financial accounting of it. David, any tips you want to give around approach of putting it all together? I mean, there's a lot we've talked about. You got, all these different parties, and you got data versus business problems. Any suggestions for how to kind of put this all together from presentation to leadership?
Yeah, and I think the biggest two pieces of advice I would give on formalizing the business case and actually getting it through the presentation phase is know that it's not a one-shot deal. A lot of times people go in and they like, I've got to pitch the business case day one. One thing with MDM, and it's gotten better over the years, every pitch I've made, it's gotten easier because people now understand what MDM is. But there's a lot of education you're going to have to do on the front. You're going to have people not understanding what master data management is, not understanding true data management concepts and what you're trying to solve. So the first thing I do before I get to putting the full business case together is a few meetings before, I'm already starting that education process. So I'm not trying to do everything at once. And then as we come around to the last kind of pitch we make sure that message has stayed consistent. So now they've gone through the education process. They've seen the milestones. They see what we're going to deliver. They understand how they can measure the ROI. And then the last pitch is, I usually do is, why wouldn't we go down this road? So I kind of phrase it back to them over the series of them hearing the business case. I want to understand why they might object to it, so that the last thing I'm doing is closing those objections before we go into that decision-making mode. And it's been fairly successful. I think this last implementation that we just started on here is my 6th successful pitch to 6 organizations. So I'm batting 100 right now.
All right. Well, I think that's one of the reasons we invited you to the call, because we've seen that you really understand how to put all these things together for leadership. So we've watched that happen, David. That's Malcolm. Coming back to you. I know this was a hot topic always at Gartner with the MDM analysts. Any accretive thoughts you want to give to what we just talked about?
Yeah, and it's been touched on by both of our two previous experts here. Lawrence mentioned the kind of the story or the narrative, and kind of data storytelling is so important, and it's really important when it comes to MDM, because you may be asking your business to change how it does business. You may be asking your business to change how it onboards customers or suppliers, because MDM is inherently operational. It can be. When it comes to establishing that story, the challenge I'll leave everybody with is, can you, as a data leader or as a contributor in a data team, Can you do what in the VC community would call an elevator pitch? If you had 20 seconds on an elevator with your CEO or your CIO or anybody else, and you had 20 seconds to explain why you're doing MDM, could you do it? Could you make the elevator pitch? Could you say something like, well, we are going to implement the discipline of master data management to improve our overall supplier-related data to drive down our supply inventory cost by 20% over the next 18 months. Could you do that if you were on an elevator with a CEO who asked, what are you doing and what's your top priority, or what do you need help with? Right? That's the challenge. That's the high-level version of that business case, that narrative that Lawrence was talking about. But it's also the kind of the gateway to allowing the consistency that David was talking about. The metaphor I always use here is you need to keep pounding that drum. Keep pounding the MDM drum, and everybody needs to be in the same rhythm and with the same story. And the best way that you can do that is to nail that elevator pitch and have everybody in the data team know it and be able to repeat it.
Love it. Love it. Excellent. Excellent. Well, listen, I know we're out of time. I cannot thank all three of you enough. I mean, there's so many things we went through today, but the things I've jotted down just as highlights, is linking data to specific problem, being focused on outcomes, business involvement and their excitement. And that's huge. Even when you do the business cases, I know that I've been presented plenty of business cases, in my positions in companies with my teams that want to buy a product or invest in a project. And I always want to see that. I'll always look to the business person and say, are you bought into this? Is this going to help you with your business? So I know that's always important with selling to executive leadership. And lastly, that consistent, cohesive, easy to understand story. Those are kind of the big highlights that I pulled out from this conversation among many. So everyone in the audience, thank you for joining. I hope you pulled something out of value or multiple things of value out of this conversation. And we here at Prophecy really do feel that we're not just a software company. We have people this is all we do. We have people with decades of experience. We're fortunate to have customers like David, not volunteering David here specifically for this, but that are here to help you also, not just us, but our customers to help you with these big decisions. And we want you to think of us as a resource to help you be successful, whether you're buying our product or not, and not just a software company. So hopefully this helped you and gave you a little value to your day. Thank you so much again. Thank you to my esteemed colleagues and guests. You guys were fantastic. Really appreciate it. Everybody have a fantastic day. Enjoy the rest of the Data Hero Summit.